Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, Omicron panic has gotten much worse in just the last 24 hours, despite no new information about this COVID strain that would lead anyone to conclude that we need to be more worried about it. Case in point, California's statewide mask mandate is back. From December 15th until January 15th, Californians must once again wear masks in all indoor spaces, according to Governor Gavin Newsom. I feel like I just got out of the state in time. Now, many Californians were already under some kind of mask mandate. As I just alluded to, I was there last week in San Francisco and LA, and I saw plenty of masking, but voluntary and forced. Both voluntary and forced. Now the whole state is supposed to spend the holidays masked up. Who knows if Newsom will end the policy on January 15th? At no point during the pandemic have government officials felt any shame in expanding or continuing draconian mandates, lockdowns, and other restrictions. Many states and local governments feel totally unconstrained and can take whatever action they deem necessary, even if the threat is minimal. Officials were quick to assert that the mandate is necessary because cases have surged 47% since Thanksgiving. That sounds like a lot, but we're talking about an increase from 9 cases per 100,000 people to 14. And remember that we don't yet have reason to expect that Omicron is scarier than Delta. Indeed, the evidence we have so far suggests that it might produce a less severe disease than Delta, at least among the vaccinated. But it's not just the state of California that's panicking about Omicron. Philadelphia recently rolled out an indoor restaurant vaccine mandate. They'll accept a negative COVID test until the middle of January, and then it's mandatory vaccination. You're not vaccinated, you can't eat out in the city, and it applies to kids as well, young kids. Throughout the pandemic, I've looked to elite college campuses where the student population is typically between 90 and 99% vaccinated and at low risk of a negative COVID health outcome. I've looked there for any evidence that progressive administrators will ease up on their love of pandemic restrictions. Over and over again, we've seen that the very people who could most afford to return to normal are being forced to behave most cautiously. And so it is with Omicron. DePaul University in Chicago announced yesterday they would move classes online for the month of January. Craig Klugman, a medical anthropologist and member of DePaul's COVID advisory team, told higher ed watchdog news site The College Fix that he was not in the room when the decision was made. Middlebury College in Vermont, which by the way is 99% vaccinated, is immediately moving to remote instruction and told students to leave campus immediately if possible. They will take all their final exams online. All athletic games and social events are canceled. Students who are stuck on campus may not eat in the cafeteria. All meals will be grab and go. Mask wearing is required and will be militantly enforced. Cornell University suspended all school-sponsored events and urged students not to socialize. The administration said that the 90 active cases of COVID on the campus are deeply concerning, even though not a single one has been severe or required hospitalization, not one. And that's hardly surprising. We have learned a lot about COVID over the last 2 years. We know that young people, as well as all vaccinated people except for the very old and frail or the immunocompromised or the overweight, are extremely protected from severe disease and death. If you have serious health problems or in the 65 plus category or a couple other categories, you may want to follow additional precautions for the time being. That's fair. For everyone else, we have reached the point where COVID really is akin to the flu, yet we're still treating it like it's the Black Death. In my radar yesterday, I explained how LA schools were considering exiling 34,000 vaccine-hesitant teenagers back to virtual school, even though virtual education is arguably worse for them, for their health, for their outcomes, for their prospects, than COVID is. And those aren't the only schools punishing teenagers for not being sufficiently panicked about the pandemic. New York City government recently produced this PSA. Let's watch.
Ready for your teenagers to be teenagers again? Then get them vaccinated for COVID-19 today. Without the vaccine, when your child's teammates take to the field, they'll miss out. Or when their friends go off to the movies, a concert, or get a bite to eat, your team will miss out. Because in NYC, kids 12 and up must be vaccinated to participate in many school sports, extracurricular activities, and indoor events. So let your teens start being teens again. Get them vaccinated today. Visit nyc.gov/COVID vaccine.
Are there any islands of sanity out there? One encouraging counterexample is Colorado. The state's governor is Jared Polis, an interesting and independent-minded Democrat who sometimes breaks with progressive orthodoxy. Polis recently declared that there will be no more mask mandates, and everyone who wants the vaccine can get one.
The truth is we now have highly effective vaccines that work far better than masks. I mean, not even close. If you wear a mask, it does decrease your risk of getting COVID, and that's a good thing to do indoors around others. But if you get COVID and you are still unvaccinated, the case is just as bad as if you were not wearing a mask. So a different place. Everybody's had more than enough opportunity to get vaccinated. I think hopefully it's been at your pharmacy, your grocery store, a bus near you, big events. At this point, if you haven't been vaccinated, it's really your own darn fault.
Polis goes on to say that the emergency is over. And he's right. Time to act like it. So we were actually just before the show talking about who is the Democratic lineup outside of Kamala Harris. It's we were going like state by state. What governor could possibly? I like Jared Polis a lot. Now he's maybe not the most charismatic, or he's not a household name by far, but I'm a big fan because he has a interesting, iconoclastic kind of. He doesn't appear to demonize the other side quite as much as some other Democrats, and I was happy to hear he says, nope, no more statewide mask mandate. Deal with it, which is where I'm at emotionally and have been for a long time. What say you, Ryan?
Well, I don't know how much purchase there is in the Democratic primary for
that kind of rant, right?
For that message.
Right, and for that reason, he would be doomed running. But
and yes, and he'd have other problems with the left because of his ties to business and his rich guy thing. But he also has a real progressive streak, and like you said, an independent streak. He's definitely an interesting guy. So maybe at some point there will be purchase for that position in either party. Like right now, there's no room for sanity on the right. Like you can't.
That's true.
You can't say, here are some reasonable things that maybe we should do to lessen the
I got a booster. Maybe you should too. How dare you?
Yes, how dare you? It is. Like I totally understand somebody who doesn't want to take the vaccine themselves. I get that, but it's harder for me to get it as somebody's mind who wants to really crusade against other people doing it and moralize other people's decisions to do it.
Absolutely.
Like you don't want to do it, fine, but like you're getting mad at people who did.
Yeah.
Like that's
no, and I have criticized, and I am so sick of the effort by Republican leaders, government officials, to prohibit people from or prohibit small, self-selected, voluntary associations from having vaccine requirements. It makes no sense for Republicans to do that. But on the other side, I can't understand how demonizing and further stigmatizing and punishing teenagers who have not been vaccinated, telling them they can't participate in sports, extracurricular activities, can't go to the movies. That's what New York is saying to kids. That's what LA in some ways is saying to kids. That makes no sense. That is not in their best health interests. That is negative for their health to do that because of all these other problems. They are the most COVID oppressed group of people are the people least affected by the actual disease.
Yeah, and you could see where this was headed very early on. And in Washington, I took my daughter very early in the pandemic to this gigantic field in order to practice bike riding. She was learning at the time, and it's technically part of the Department of Parks and Rec, which at the time was closed. And from several hundred yards away, they hired rent-a-cop. We were the only ones in this multi-acre field. It's yelling at us to get off the field.
Oh, because of the horrible risk.
And I remember walking home, my daughter's crying. She's like, "What? Why can't I be in the field? Why are authorities forcing you into your home rather than on this field where there's nobody else around?" And in London, they started, kicking people off of grassy areas. And then you learn later that vitamin D is by no means any substitute for anything else, but is useful. And so you could see that this was going in two wildly extreme directions from the very beginning. And I wanted.
Then you placed a copy of Atlas Shrugged into your child's hand, and you made a convert to my ideology.
What I did do is I said, hey liberals, if you want your ideology to be accepted by people, you have to make it more reasonable. And if you say things that are unreasonable, that in the future, when you say things that are reasonable, they're going to find those unreasonable too. And nobody listens to me. So here we are.
I say this to Democrats all the time. Why can't you just be more normal? And then I say it to Republicans too. Yeah. And both sides say, nope. We cannot help ourselves.
Apostate.
But I'm looking forward to what's on your radar coming up next.